Yes.
My name is Jeff Webster, and I'm the President and CEO of the Greater San Antonio Chamber. We are thrilled to be here today with our friends with the SA Report. You know, it's the only nonprofit news source we have in town, and I got to tell you, it is nice to go someplace that delivers it straight up and let me make my own decisions. So I thank my friends at SA Report for what they do. I'm going to do one quick push, and then I want to turn it over to Angie Mark from SA Report. I want to say this. We're doing this not to endorse any candidate. We're doing this because San Antonio has to show up to vote. Show up to vote. This. And I'm going to tell you, we're not done. We've got an election coming in May. You have to show up to vote. We're not going to tell you who to vote for, but you've got to be there. You've got to reach your friends, and you've got to vote. Are we all clear on that? Yes. All right. That's what I want to hear. Now, with that, I'll introduce my friend, Angie Mark from SA Report. I got to tell you, this is one hell of a lady. She helped put this together. Angie.
Thank you so much. We are so delighted to partner with the Greater San Antonio Chamber for this event. Our moderators for tonight are the San Antonio Report's editor-in-chief, Leigh Munsil, who will moderate the first debate, and then our government and politics reporter, who I'm sure you all read all the time, Andrea Drusch. Jeff, thank you so much for the partnership. We're going to be digging deep tonight. We're going to be digging deep into questions that matter to you, the voters. And I got to tell you, thank you all for being here. What a great turnout for the first debate, and I'm sure we're going to have a great turnout for the second debate. But let's be clear. No one in San Antonio is doing this deep civic engagement election work like the San Antonio Report and the Greater San Antonio Chamber. No one. We know it's important to you. We know it's important to the city and our future. So, if you get a chance to log on to the San Antonio Report website and make a small donation to support the civic engagement work, or make a big donation, we'd be very much appreciative. And with that, welcome our moderator, our editor-in-chief, Leigh Munsil.
Thank you so much. We have a ton to get to and not enough time to do it, so let's get going. Welcome to our back-to-back debates in the House District races 118 and 121. I'm your moderator for the first debate, Leigh Munsil. I'm thrilled to have such a great crowd here. For our first debate, covering House District 121, we're going to start with a 1 minute and 30-second opening statement by each candidate. I'm going to go over the ground rules real quick, and they will be the same for both debates. From there, when I ask a question, you'll have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. If I ask a follow-up question, you'll get 1 minute to respond. Or if a rebuttal is needed, you'll get 1 minute awarded at my discretion. One quick note for the crowd, the debate is exactly 45 minutes, so disruptions from the audience will take away from the candidates' time to make their case to voters, so please keep your applause short and respectful. House District 121 includes North Central San Antonio, Stone Oak, Alamo Heights, Olmos Park, and Terrell Hills, as well as some parts of unincorporated Bear County. Many of you in the audience will likely remember this as former Speaker Joe Strauss's old district, and now soon-to-be Representative Steve Allison's old district, soon-to-be former, who lost to Marc LaHood in the Republican primary. The backstory of all of this is that after the House rejected the school voucher plan, Texas Governor Greg Abbott vowed to root out the 21 Republicans who went against him, and Allison was one of the unlucky ones. Fresh off that primary victory, attorney Marc LaHood now faces Democrat Laurel Jordan Swift, an orthopedic device saleswoman who jumped into the political arena after she grew frustrated watching the Texas legislature these past few sessions. Let's get started with our opening statements. Mr. LaHood, since you won the coin flip backstage, you will go second in the opening statements as well as closing. So, Ms. Swift, would you start us off with your opening statement?
Thank you, Leigh. And thank you so much to the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce and to the SA Report for hosting this. This is very, very important and a great opportunity for us to be able to discuss our opinions on the issues. My name is Laurel Jordan Swift, and I am so excited to be the Democrat running for Texas House District 121. I was born and raised in District 121. I graduated from the same high school as both of my parents, MacArthur High School. I attended UTSA and earned my bachelor's degree in biology there. And I stayed in the district to raise my 5 awesome kids in Alamo Heights. My family has called District 121 home for more than 70 years. The beliefs that I hold and the values I live by were all formed in District 121. I was a young mom I got pregnant when I was young, and I struggled to make ends meet. And I learned early on how to make compromises and how to work hard to help those around me. I figured out a way to go back to college when I was 30 with 3 kids in tow. I cared for my ailing parents until they passed. A lot of women out there know what that's like. And I stayed in the district, and I worked hard and had a great career in medical sales. And I decided to run for office because we're being driven apart. Oh, thanks.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So I was gonna say, finish your thought.
Oh, I decided to run for office because I think we're being driven apart by extremism, and I think we agree on a lot more than we disagree on, and we need to learn to work together, and that's what I plan to do in the Texas House.
Again, we're short on time. Mr. LaHood, it's your turn for your opening statement.
Thank you. Sorry, it's loud. Good evening. My name is Marc LaHood. I'm running for House District 121. We only have a minute and a half, so how do I give you a primer of who I am? Probably the quickest way is really simple. I'm a product of my parents. I didn't know they were going to be here tonight. Michael and Norma LaHood. And I'm a product, thank you. Let me just finish real quick time. And I'm a product of meeting my wife, Erica, my oldest daughter, Emily, who I met in 2015. The reality is who I am was largely shaped both from the principles and foundations that they taught me and what I learned from my wife, my oldest daughter, and now we have 3 more children. So I've got a 17-year-old, I've got a 6-year-old boy, he's in the green room riding. I've got a 4-year-old girl, and our youngest is going to be 3 next month. And so short and sweet is this. I'm running for, I think, the same reason why most of us are here. We have the same concerns. We care about what we are living with, what we're dealing with, and most importantly, right, I'm 46, I'm past the halfway of my point. The reality is God's going to call me home. And I want to make sure that my home, my district, my state is safer now and safer when I leave it than when I got there. I want to make sure it's more successful and more financial than when we got here. And most importantly, I want to make sure it's free. Because at the end of the day, we're here because not for ourselves, but what we're leaving this state and our district. I look forward to answering y'all's questions. Thank you very much.
We've now gotten to know you a little bit in your opening statements. Thank you for that. Wanted to give a little lay of the land on your district. Under newly redrawn district maps, House District 121 has gone from a district that both parties fought over to one that former President Donald Trump would have carried by 2.3 percentage points. At the same time, Representative Steve Allison, the incumbent who's already been knocked out of the race by Mr. LaHood, created the open seat that you're both going for today. So with a lot that's changing in District 121, my question is, how have you gone about introducing yourself to voters so far this campaign? And what is your message as a new face seeking to be their representatives? Let's start with Ms. Cole.
Hi, that's great. Well, what I'm hoping is that a lot of folks I already know. These are my neighbors. I'm your neighbor. I grew up here, like I said, and I've worked here my whole life and raised kids. So I'm hoping a lot of folks know me. I got to actually work on the Lyle and Hahn show 30 years ago, way back in the day. So I'm very rooted here. But since I decided to run, I actually did quit my job and have focused full-time on running for office. We have spent money on signs. We're sending out mailers. We have knocked almost 20,000 doors since July. We go out 3-4 days a week when I'm not at an event, and we ask people what concerns you. What are the things that are worrying to you? And that's what I want to do. I think that's what a representative is supposed to do. We're supposed to ask our constituents what they want. And most of the time, people in this district, because we love our schools, they're concerned about our education system and the voucher plan that the governor wants to pass. We have a lot of people that are concerned about women's reproductive health and abortion access. We have folks that are concerned about the economy. We have folks that are concerned about access to health care. But that's what I'm doing. I'm finding out what folks want, and I'm ready to deliver for them in November.
Mr. LaHood, would you take that same question? As a new face to represent this district, what is your pitch to voters?
So I think the two-part was, what have I done? So since I've gotten in this race, I have made it a priority to go out and talk to people, right? In law, there's an old saying that the cross-examination is the greatest vehicle ever invented to discover the truth. And the reason why that is because mailers are important and commercials are important. But at the end of the day, the only way you get to size somebody up is you look at them in the eyes, you watch their body language, and you can see how their brain is actually working. That's why I love forums like this, and I've made it a priority. I think I've knocked 6,000, 7,000 doors while this race has been going on. And what I've encountered in both Democrat doors, independent doors, and Republican doors is at the end of the day, we have the same concerns, right? A hierarchy of needs. Our number one priority that we're all facing is we are scared and we'll make sure that we have a successful, a secure and safe environment, right? That comes with common sense stuff. Supporting our law enforcement, securing our border, making sure that we're safe. The example I always use is when we go on vacation, do we go on Facebook and say, hey, I'm out of town. I have no alarm system. And by the way, if you break in, I'm not going to call the police. No, of course not, because it doesn't make sense. The number two priority that everyone I've encountered is at the end of the day, we have to pay bills. Property taxes, money in our pockets, because without that, we can't provide for our families. And those have been the number two issues that I've seen across the board. And those are my focuses.
You already alluded to this, but most political observers are expecting school vouchers to take up lots of oxygen in the next legislative session. Right now, different states across the country have been approaching this issue in very different ways, and even the Texas House and Senate came up with very different plans in the last legislative session. Last year, the Senate put forward a plan that would have allocated $500 million for a total of 50,000 education savings accounts, around 1% of the state students, aimed at primarily those with financial need. The governor rejected that plan, saying every student should have access to ESAs. Mr. LaHood, we'll start with you on this one. Do you agree with the governor that it needs to be available to every student? And if so, what do you think is a reasonable top-line cost?
Okay. So first question is this. Is reasonable, not even reasonable, is exceptional education something that everyone needs? Without a doubt, yes. The biggest issue that I've run into is there's a lie. The lie is that you can't both empower parents to do the number one thing and the best they can for their child, and you can't properly take care of our teachers and our education system. I'll give you a story. Last September, the Mexican-American Legislative Caucus had a casino night. My wife and I went. We went and sat down, we're playing blackjack, and there was 3 Latinas at the table. One was from Laredo, one was from McAllen area, one was from, I think, Roma in Starr County. And I asked him, I became that guy I made fun of, right, showing pictures of my kids. You have kids? Yeah. You love your children? Of course I do. Does anyone know your children better than you do, or care about your children more than you do? No. Do you want the very best for your child? Yes. For whatever the reason is, if your child wasn't getting the very best educational experience or social experience at school, would you want to be able to put your child somewhere where they can thrive, where they have the best opportunity? Yes. And I said, and part of the money that you're paying in taxes, would you want it to stay with the school that is not servicing your child, or would you want it to follow your child? Unequivocally, all 3 said yes. Because at the root, we want to make sure we're doing best for our children. The flip side, and I will probably come back to it though, is this, is that the numbers behind it don't take funds away from public education. The two can exist and thrive.
One piece of that question is what would be a reasonable top-line cost for a program like that? We were talking about $500 million for just 1% of Texas students. So how big should this program be?
Well, like anything else in life, you have the pragmatics of actually instituting something. And so the reality is this. The first question before we talk about finances and budgets is where's our money spent? TEA put out this last legislative year that $15,708 was spent per child. So to answer your question is this. The question is that money being spent on our teachers or is that money spent on bloated administrative costs? Because the reality is what we have seen is our money, as it's being spent more, is going on the background of administrations and not of our teachers. So the first step is to make sure that we're actually spending it on education and taking care of our teachers. The second question is how do you pragmatically do that? And that's going to be a stair-step implementation. I believe that if the funds are there and we can make it universal, we will. And if not, then we start with the lowest income and then incrementally jack it up.
We just spent a minute or so extra on that answer, so let's go first. Could you speak a little bit about your philosophy on vouchers, and then I'll get into my follow-up on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Texas Constitution actually, Article 7, Section 1, mandates that the state provide free public education, number one. We are currently ranked 43rd out of 50 states in per student funding. We're at the bottom of the barrel. The plan that you were talking about, there are currently 330,000 kids currently enrolled in private school. To give them the $8,000 voucher that was proposed would cost $2.5 billion. So not half a billion like was stated. So this voucher plan is breaking the budget in Arizona. They projected it would cost $65 million. It cost $329 million, and they projected it's going to cost $465 million next year. So this is a budget buster. And what I would say is, being 43rd out of 50 states in per student funding, the radical idea is choosing the voucher plan. The smarter idea is to fully fund our public schools right now.
Again, we have limited time.
Yeah. District 121 loves its public schools. People move to this district to go to all of the public schools in this district. I have talked to the superintendents. If we do not get funding, the $4.5 billion that was held back last year, we are going to have to start slashing programs and slashing teachers. This is not something that we want. We love our schools and we need to protect them.
Let's move straight into the follow-up again. We can clap afterward. Your potential future colleague, Democratic Representative Barbara Gervin-Hawkins, said in July that it's time for lawmakers to come to the table on vouchers, or else Republicans will just do it without Democratic input. There are some realities of working in the Texas legislature, as a Democrat particularly. So are you worried about what this legislation will look like without Democratic input? And which specific compromises do you think your party should be willing to deal on?
Yes, I am worried about what this will look like without Democratic input. However, I think we have to fight tooth and nail. We have to educate the public on what this is going to do to their public schools and what we could actually accomplish if we fully funded them and paid our teachers the way they're supposed to be paid. So while I understand Representative Gervin-Hawkins' stance, I feel like it's a little too early for us to concede that. I mean, I don't know that it's a done deal at this point.
Okay, Mr. LaHood, you cited Representative Allison's vote on vouchers as one of the main reasons that you're running for this seat. You've been asked before about the lessons learned from a voucher program in the state of Arizona, which was referred to earlier. It's also my home state, which has an estimated price tag of $900 million. Well, 3/4 of the students receiving them were already attending private schools. How would Texas's ESA program look different? Are you worried about school vouchers eating into the funding for public schools, and how should Republicans make sure it doesn't just maintain the status quo, but very expensively?
Okay. So short and sweet is this. Going back to those numbers, $15,708. So the DEA breaks it down to this. 39% of that is spent on teacher salaries, 28% of that is spent on administrative costs, and the remaining 40% is on the overhead that you have to keep a school open. Lights, electricity, cafeteria, so on and so forth. That comes out to being about $4,500. The reality is politics don't change common sense business principles. P&L, profit loss, money in, money out. So if the school is receiving $7,500, but they don't have the cost of educating the child, and their fixed costs are $4,500, there's actually a net positive of $2,500. But the plan that was in place would have actually infused billions of dollars into the system. 121 would have gotten tens of millions of dollars. It would have increased the basic allotment, increased it to increase with inflation, and would have given teachers a bonus check. So that would have addressed that issue of this misconception that there's a shortfall in the money.
Okay, Ms. Swift, I wanted to go back to you on this one more time. An analysis of standardized test data by city education partners last month showed that 46% of public school students across San Antonio are reading on grade level, and just 31% are performing on grade level in math. If vouchers aren't the answer to our state's significant educational attainment problems, then what should the state be doing to hold schools accountable?
I appreciate those numbers, and I think after COVID, we know that there was a decrease and there was a loss of learning during COVID. But if you're starving your school districts and you're expecting them to perform up to snuff, you're the arsonist putting out the fire with a voucher plan. We can't expect our teachers and our students to perform without the right tools and the amount of money that they need to get the job done. We've seen it work in other states. We know that public schools can be great. And if, as a Texan, I want our public schools to be #1 in the country. And I want them to be the center of our communities like they always have been. I want us to get behind our band competitions and our football games and our theater productions in our local schools like we always have. And if we fund them properly without this giant expensive voucher plan radical experiment, we can do that. We can see it, and it can happen.
I think we'll probably go back to vouchers at another point tonight. But I also want to ask about a question that I think is really interesting and kind of unique to the two of you. In recent years, stores that sell legal and intoxicating hemp products have seemingly taken over our state strip malls, selling gummies and other products that get users high with little regulation. Earlier this year, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick told the State Affairs Committee to look into the sale of consumable hemp in Texas before the next session, and to consider a ban against Delta 8 and Delta 9, or at least investigating their marketing to and access by children. With the federal 2018 Farm Bill inadvertently legalizing these intoxicating hemp products, this industry is growing way faster than state law can keep up, and lawmakers will need to face it in 2025. Ms. Swift, I want to start with you on this one. You have a medical background. Help us understand the concerns with some or all of these hemp derivatives, and whether the answer is more regulation, better regulation, or a loosening of the state's very narrow compassionate use exception when it comes to these products.
Yeah, this is a really good question. The rise of the Delta 8 product kind of started with the passing of the 2018 Farm Bill, which allowed the growth of hemp in the state. And Delta 8 can be synthesized from hemp. And Delta 9 THC is the specific drug that is outlawed in the state of Texas. And that's usually found in actual, marijuana cannabis plant. So what's happened is we've left this loophole for Delta 8 to be synthesized from hemp production. And I think they kind of knew this was going to happen, and they should have probably put some regulations on it from the beginning. The issue is that it is not being regulated. It's being sold in gas stations. It's being marketed to kids. We have to do what we can. We have to do everything we can to keep it out of the hands of children. It has the same effects as marijuana, and you can buy it at the gas station and it looks like candy. So it is a very big danger. But what we also know is that since that Farm Bill, there is a large economy now selling these products. They are contributing to our economy, and there is a desire for these products. So what I would say is there still needs to be a serious debate about all of these THC products, and we need to determine whether or not we are going to legalize them or not legalize them. I don't know how my constituency would vote on that, and that is something I would hold town halls, and I would ask for input from the citizens of my district. But it is something that we have to address, and it is something that we're going to have to it's going to be a big problem because we've had it continuing for so long.
Mr. LaHood, same question, but also as an attorney, you got a front row seat to how getting caught with marijuana, which is legal in 24 other states, can affect someone's life. So how would you approach this issue as a state lawmaker? Would you support legalization? And if so, what kind of parameters?
That's a pretty big question. I'm going to focus on, I think, what you had mentioned first and foremost, which is, so what are the pragmatic or practical or beneficial uses of therapeutic drugs, right? Specifically CBD or THC. You know, this is personal to me, and for a couple of reasons. Because it starts before I was born. Both my mom's brothers served in Vietnam, and one of her brothers committed suicide in 1979, and her other brother became addicted to heroin in and out of prison, ultimately died in prison. Last week, one of my best friends, John Scott, who served in the Marine Corps, last weekend, one of his best friends he served with, a father of two, committed suicide. What I know is this, is that we have to stop talking propaganda and the political slogans, because statistically and research-wise, we know this, that there are beneficial uses for people suffering from PTSD and trauma, because the reality is this, right? Every 22 minutes, a veteran is killing themselves, and that's not including the other self-harm that people are dealing with. And so we have to look at the real-life effects of it. Now, aside from that, do we got to regulate to make sure that any kind of drug or substance doesn't go into kids? Well, of course, it's common sense. We have to regulate it. We don't let kids buy nicotine or alcohol. We put restrictions on where they're sold. That's a common sense answer. That is best answered with people getting together, working together in the House to pass sensible regulation. And the most important part of this is not just regulation, but the laws themselves have to be written well.
Can you give us some more specifics on what you think a proposal should look like on this issue?
Well, just top of the head, if you have to be 18 to buy alcohol, it's not 1975 anymore, 18 to buy nicotine, 21 to buy alcohol. I mean, in Texas, well, there's a bifurcated law, right? 17 is the criminal statute, and then 18 for when you're considered civilly an adult. 18 to vote, I would say that 18 is probably a good age for when people can actually make a decision for themselves and when to buy it, and making sure that you're not selling it at any location without IDing the person to make sure they're of age.
Ms. Swift, what do you think should be in the bill on this issue?
What I'd really like to see is a ballot initiative to ask the voters of Texas whether they want to legalize cannabis products or not. Because that is something I don't know what they would prefer to do. If we do, what I think is if Delta 9 marijuana is illegal, Delta 8 marijuana should probably be illegal as well, except for the medicinal use part of it. But if we are going to legalize Delta 8, it absolutely has to be regulated. We have to know how it's manufactured, we have to know the ingredients, we have to know that it's safe and consistent, and it can only be sold to adults and regulated, like alcohol and tobacco. So, we just have to decide as a state if we are ready to legalize marijuana or not.
Thank you. I'd like to dig a little deeper on the makeup of this district and what you think voters are looking for in this district. You just alluded to one thing that we don't know necessarily what voters are looking for, but this district has historically chosen more establishment Republicans, but Democrats have long considered it one of their battlegrounds, and most recently it surprised some folks when conservative groups were successful in getting a candidate from their wing of the party through the primary. My point being that lots of different groups with different worldviews see House District 121 as a worthy target. Mr. LaHood, you're here today with the support of Governor Abbott, Attorney General Ken Paxton, West Texas oil billionaires, and a number of supporters whose voters in this district maybe aren't really trusting. In fact, in UTSA's recent poll of local registered voters, 63% of respondents said they never or only some of the time trust the state of Texas to do the right thing. More than half of respondents disapproved of Abbott's performance as governor. So tell us why voters here should trust you.
Just for clarification, is the question,
Why should voters trust you if they don't trust the statewide Republicans who supported you and pushed you through?
Okay. Well, to say if someone supports you that you are a copy of them is ludicrous, right? When I go out knocking doors, real common sense. I say, what are your whys? What is most important to you? Because the reality is, I don't know a candidate that I voted for or read about that I agree everything with. We ask ourselves, what is the most important thing for us? And we find a candidate that we think is going to advocate successfully, conglomerated into a solar central area that dictates the policies and the provisions. We're not going to have one open, honest debate to even get to the part of whether or not we have funding parental empowerment, funding education, looking at how education is currently spent, and making sure that it's spent efficiently. Because remember, the Constitution does guarantee education. It doesn't guarantee bloated budgets, and that's the difference.
You brought up something that might be first on the agenda in the next legislative session, which might be a speaker vote. Would you support Speaker Gillen?
Well, as of right now, the caucus, which I'm a member of, 46 of us voted to support David Cook. Now, I haven't won yet, so my opinion now doesn't matter because I'm not in the House. Once I win in November and I'm sworn in and we actually make the vote, I will follow the caucus. The issue ultimately is this: what I want in a speaker is someone that's not going to derail the power, is not going to undercut the priorities, and to put the power back in the representatives and not hold it hostage in calendars and kill bills that would help us and our families. Because the reality is, there's an old joke when I first got in that said, the House is where bills go to die. And bills go to die when the process doesn't live to its full potential. When the speakers and representatives aren't allowed to advocate for their constituents. When we're scared to have open and honest debate. That is how we're going to make forward progress and make some differences here in Texas.
Ms. Swift, same question about a speaker vote if you were to take office.
Well, what I'd say first is Representative Steve Allison was cut by that faction of people. They want to eliminate anyone who argues or disagrees with them. Even, they don't want folks that vote for their constituents. They want folks that will vote for Greg Abbott's ideas. So that right there is. So I would want to vote for a speaker that is willing to compromise, that wants to work with all of us, that wants to make a functioning. We have 4.5 months to allocate a budget the size of Russia's budget. I mean, it's 4.5 months. We have to work together. We have to partner up. We have to respect each other's views and the views of our constituents at home. And that's the speaker that I will vote for.
Thank you. We're heading into closing statements now, so reserve your applause for that. Ms. Swift, you will kick us off on closing statements. Will you close, please?
Yes. First, I want to thank everybody so much for being here today. This has been a lot of fun and a lot of, it's been great to hear my opponent's opinions and to be able to share mine. Again, I am your neighbor. I am just like you. I've raised 5 kids. I've worked full-time, cared for my parents. My husband and I took in my brother who suffers from schizophrenia about 3 years ago when his group home closed down. I'm one of those moms that gets things done. We can juggle 4 or 5 balls in the air and make it happen. And that's what I want to be able to do. I want to be able to serve the public in this role. I want to be accountable. I want to be representative of all of you. And I want to be accessible and responsive. That's the word I was trying to spit out. So thank you again for being here. I ask humbly for your vote in November. And let's get Texas back on track.
There are 30 seconds left on the clock, so you guys can finish talking. Go ahead, Mr. LaHood.
No, thank you first and foremost, Laurel. Thank you for coming here. The reality is this: I'm going to tell you what I tell people when I knock on doors, or I'm going to ask you what I ask people when I knock on doors. What is your why? It's literally that simple. Not politics, not parties. What is most important to you right now? What is your concern? Because as much as I like Laurel, and I do, I think she's a nice lady, but our ideologies are completely different. My focus is very clear. My focus is on security, on maintaining Texas. We've grown since the Texas boom to the 8th largest economy, and making sure that we continue to keep growing, to provide opportunity, to provide finances, to provide breaks so that we can afford to live, to make sure that we don't censor because we disagree with somebody, right? I believe in freedom, and that's not a catchword. Freedom is only free if you can talk to people that you disagree with and go your own separate way. And the reality is that's not something that happens naturally. It takes a conscious effort to ask yourself what matters most to you, what is the most practical for you, and who is the best person to get it there and make it done. So my name is Marc LaHood. I am running for 121. I'm asking for your vote. Shameless plug, I have 10 seconds. My wife is La Reina Linda for Fiesta, so she's raising money for scholarships. It's nonpartisan, and it's for education, so.
Don't go anywhere, there's one more debate happening in just a few short minutes, so I'm going to hand it off to our publisher for closing.
Thank you so much. Let's give it up for the candidates. Being here, and to the Greater San Antonio Chamber of Commerce who worked so hard on this event to make it possible. Thank you, and to our editor-in-chief for a great moderation. Let's do that. We're back here at 7:14, so making a quick break. We're gonna go up to another.
You've done this with us before.
Thank you guys. That was great. Thank you both so much.
Into it. Kristian, you won the coin toss and you were elected to go first, so you've got a minute 30 seconds to do your opening statement.
Thank you, Andrea. First, I want to thank the San Antonio Report and the Chamber for hosting us tonight. My name is Kristian Carranza. I'm the Democratic nominee in District 118. My story starts on the south side of San Antonio. I was raised by a single mom who worked extremely hard to support my brother and I, despite her having chronic health issues and no health insurance. So for me, what that meant was getting my very first job at 16 years old. And in college, when my mom's health got really bad, I did what any daughter would do for her mom. I came home to take care of her. I made sure that she got the health care that she needed. And I'm very proud of that decision. It's what's inspired me to become a community organizer. Since then, I've registered over 10,000 voters here in Texas. I've enrolled hundreds of families into the ACA, and now I'm running for state representative because I believe that hardworking families like mine deserve a seat at the table. Growing up low income, I've seen what it looks like to struggle to make ends meet, and that's why I'm always going to fight to lower costs for working families. As a proud 2008 McCollum graduate, I've seen how transformative public education can be, and that's why I'm always going to fight for teachers and students. And as a young woman living under the most extreme abortion ban in the country, I'm always going to defend our reproductive freedoms. I knock doors every single day, and it is so clear that voters are ready for a change. And I'm ready to serve the community that has given me so much, and I really look forward to tonight's conversation.
Welcome. My name is John Lujan. I'm the state representative for House District 118. First of all, I want to say thanks to the Senate. Thank you. First, I want to say thank you to the San Antonio Report and to the Greater San Antonio Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. And then also, I want to just acknowledge and thank my wife for being here. We celebrated 40 years of marriage last June, and I'm real proud of that. And I got two of my sons here also. And then I got Bashar. He's from Turkey. He's a foreign exchange student, and we do foreign exchange every year, and he's from Turkey. But I know the challenges of raising a family and the difficulties of that. We have 5 boys in our family, and all of them are grown men and successful young men. As most of you know, I was proud to work with the Bexar County Sheriff's Department, where I served over 5 years as a deputy sheriff. I worked in the jail, and then I was a warrant officer. After that, I spent 25, I would say glorious years, because I really loved doing 25 years in the San Antonio Fire Department. I retired about 11 years ago, and the only reason why I retired was because we had started a small business, 3 of us, and about 10, 11 years ago, we were at 200 employees. My partner said, man, you said we got to this point you would retire. I went ahead and retired. Today we have about 500 employees in our company. During this time, I've coached. Thank you. I'm real proud of that. And that I know the need and the pressures that small business are under, because I've opened one and ran one, and we're successful at it. I've also coached for 30 years. I've been teaching Sunday school at church for 25 years to young adults and our youth, and I'm just honored to be your state representative for House District 118. Thank you.
We're going to get started with one of the top issues that we're hearing about in this campaign, and I bet you can guess what it is, which is public education. Governor Abbott has made it clear that he wants to implement a school voucher program, even though a coalition of Republicans and Democrats in the Texas House have been rejecting this idea for decades. The math is still likely to be close, even after some Republican voucher opponents were swept out in the primary. So whoever holds this seat may pass a deciding vote in whether to dramatically change the course of education for the 5.4 million students in Texas public schools. Representative Lujan, you've consistently campaigned as a supporter of public education. More recently, you've also expressed support for education savings accounts. And that last session made it really difficult to do both of those things. Governor Abbott decided it was good that support for the ESAs wasn't there in the House. Governor Abbott decided the only way public schools can have the $5.2 billion that the legislature had allocated for school budgets was to tack on the voucher program. There was an effort to try and unravel those two things so public schools could go ahead and have their funding, but he voted against it. Explain how you came to that decision.
Well, first of all, I wanted to be said that I am a strong supporter of public schools. I have been my whole life. I'm graduated from public schools. My 5 boys all graduated from public schools. My mother's a retired principal. I've always supported 100% public schools. But when I have 5 boys, 3 of my boys are adopted. 2 of them were brothers, and they're biological brothers. And we worked with them in CASA. We weren't supposed to adopt them. They were being adopted out. That adoption fell through. They went 1 month with that family. They decided not to adopt them. They were teenagers. They were just difficult. And when I found out, I said, man, we want those boys. My wife and I, we prayed about it. We said, we love these boys, 14 and 12. We brought them into our house. My boys had already graduated from public school, Southside High School. When I went to the school, we had been taken over by TEA, conservator. And it was a failing school. And I wasn't even dad yet. My wife wasn't even mom yet. How are we going to put them in a school where, I don't know, we got to have success? So what I did, we started looking around. My wife, this was before I was a legislator, we found another school, and we took our sons over there. After 2 years, they came back and said, Dad, we want to play football, for the high school and things like that. So our school was doing better, and we moved him. I say that because it was my choice as a parent. I have that choice, and I fully want to support our public schools 100%, but if they're failing, we're not meeting the requirements, then parents should have that opportunity to say, I care about my child, I'm going to take them elsewhere.
Including some in your district. If this is again the tactic in the next session, no new funding for public schools without vouchers, are you willing to leave Austin without additional funding for public schools?
No, can't guarantee anything, but I'm going to work extremely hard. Schools need to be fully funded. This 100%, we can't leave it the way it is now. I'm talking to superintendents. I know the superintendents in my district. I know school board members in my district. This is a really difficult situation for everyone. It's a difficult situation for me because I don't like being in this position. We need to do our job in Austin. We need to get our schools funded, and we need to do that immediately.
I think what you're saying is that the outcome is not what you wanted, but it is what you voted for, and not unraveling those 2 things. If you had the chance again in this next session, would you vote differently?
I would vote I think we need to unravel them. If we can unravel them, that would be good. I do believe I want the parents to have the choice. I am going to work for that because we need to give parents that opportunity to do what's right for their children.
Thank you. Ms. Carranza, you stated that your intention in this session would be, quote, holding the line against private school vouchers. You've argued that private schools aren't held to the same standards for transparency and accountability as public schools. But the South Side and public schools are statistically lagging behind San Antonio as a whole. Southeast and southwest portions of the city are between 15 and 18% worse than the state average when it comes to math and reading proficiency. Without an ESA program or vouchers to help parents get their kids out of failing schools, how do you think the state should hold public schools accountable so that students can get a better quality education?
I think that me and my opponent have very different views on this issue. For me, public schools are the heart of our communities, and they're under attack right now. This is the #1 issue in the district. Over 90% of the students in Texas attend a public school. And despite that fact, my opponent has voted 4 times to defund our public schools, and he's voted against increasing teacher pay in regular sessions and in special sessions. You can't be pro fully funding public schools and be pro vouchers. I believe those things don't mix. Vouchers are a scam. They pull tax dollars from already underfunded public schools, and they use that money to subsidize private school tuition. In states like Arizona, where we've already seen this happen, 75% of the parents that benefited from vouchers were parents that already had their children attend private schools, meaning they could already afford private school tuition. So this isn't about denying choice or school choice. School choice already exists. This is about making every public school in Texas a top-notch choice, not selling out our kids to line the pockets of billionaires.
Continuing on though with what is an immediate solution for students in failing schools, do you consider the educational outcomes for the Southside public schools right now to be acceptable? If not, what are you going to do to offer some immediate solution?
Well, what we need to do, the conversation needs to start at fully funding our public schools. The conversation doesn't need to start at vouchers. For a lot of families like mine on the South Side, we don't just look to our public schools for quality education, we also look to them as safety nets. We rely on them for childcare programs, summer programs, free meal programs. The answer isn't pulling down these schools and then dismantling the entire neighborhood. No, what we have to do is make sure that there's more teachers, not less teachers, so we can address any gaps, because right now the conversation that has started at vouchers, we've given vouchers and private schools our top priority, not the public school that the state constitution requires that we support.
Are going to be the same opportunity here if, say, 10 months from now, similar situation, can't leave, it's only vouchers and public school funding or nothing? Are you willing to leave Austin without that funding from public schools?
Again, it's really hard for me to say that compromising at vouchers is where we start the conversation, because teachers are getting paid 43rd in the nation when it comes to teacher pay. What we need to start talking about is how do we increase the basic allotment? We need to increase the basic allotment by $4,000. That's where I think we need to start these conversations.
Representative Lujan, your colleague Steve Allison ultimately sacrificed his career over what he thought was best for Texas students. If, say, the plan that lawmakers come up with doesn't meet your standards for accountability or for ensuring that public schools receive the funding that they need, would you see yourself in a similar situation? Are you willing to stake your career on this if you don't agree with the product that lawmakers come up with?
Yes, one thing that I take a lot of pride in is that I make the decisions based on meeting with constituents, based on talking to the public, the door knocking, all of those things are important to me. One of the things that I learned that is real important, especially on this topic, is that we have 2 top schools in Bexar County right now. We have Alamo Heights, that's a good school district, and a lot of people don't know who the next one is, and it's probably going to take over the first one, and that's Somerset ISD. Why are they good? Now, I'm a state representative. I go to all the different school districts. When I go over there to that school, I'm not kidding you. I walk through there, That's education at its best. They have a classroom that's a war room with every kid, and then if anybody falls, they go up. I haven't seen that in a lot of schools, but they do that because that whole culture is to lift our kids. If we can all have that, vouchers, ESAs, they don't bother me that much because a school district that's thriving and really wants to uplift the children, they're going to be the ones to win. They have the infrastructure. They got the football fields. They got everything. My boys, we were in another school in uniforms, and I liked it there. But they taught me to go back because they wanted to be Cardinals. And they wanted to wear the Cardinals. And then their older brothers, played football and sports with the Cardinals. That's pride in that. But that's a parent's decision to do those things. And if you have a school district that's thriving and doing well, that's exactly where you want to send your kids. I'm sorry, say that again?
What are the elements that if a school voucher plan is lacking, you would vote no on it?
We have to have accountability. What I don't want is I'm talking about parental choice, but I don't want people to choosing for a public school or a private school if they're measured differently. That bothers me. We have to measure it on the same so that the parents can make that right decision to do that. So accountability, measurements, those things are going to be very important, especially in this next session.
Okay. And we will that Leigh and I may have compared notes on our questions here, but Ms. Carranza, San Antonio Democrat Robert Urban Hawkins said in July that if Democrats refuse to negotiate on vouchers, Republicans could pass it without them. Are you worried about what this legislation would look like without Democratic input? And which specific provisions do you think that your party should be most focused on fighting for?
This is a really hard issue because when I mention out-of-state billionaires, I meant it. Right now, it's not lost on anyone that Greg Abbott received the biggest single donation in Texas history from an out-of-state extremist. Greg Abbott is doing the bidding of these extremists, and he's doing the bidding of these Christian nationalist billionaires. So we need to call out why this is happening. What we need to do is make sure that these people are getting their dollars out of the Texas state, so that way we can actually have a real conversation. Because there's been too much money from these pro-voucher supporters to have a real conversation about how to move forward.
Texas has some of the strictest abortion laws in the country, mandating that patients must have life-threatening conditions and be at risk of death or substantial impairment of a major bodily function. Ms. Carranza, this is an issue that Texas Democrats have fought and filibustered with all their might and haven't been able to do much about. As somebody who's campaigning hard on improving outcomes for women's reproductive health, what is a reasonable expectation of what you might be able to achieve in the next session?
I've always said that I'm willing to work with anybody if it's for the good of Bexar County, and I'm committed to that. I think that there's a lot of common ground. Keeping women safe and healthy, we all want that, right? So I think that's where we start. I want to make sure that we're including provisions that require doctors to prioritize life of the mother. Because, and I will be remiss if I don't bring up yesterday's Supreme Court decision in which they made the decision to uphold the Texas abortion ban the way that it is. My opponent made remarks where he said that he would force his hypothetical daughter.
I didn't say that. Don't say that. I never said forced.
Mr. Lujan, please give me the courtesy of finishing my answer.
Go ahead.
He made these remarks, and I think more than ever, it is so important that we are electing people to the state house who really understand women's health care. I'm not going to create hypothetical examples about what women go through because I am a woman living and planning a family under the country's most extreme abortion ban. More than 26,000 women in Texas have had to carry their rapist babies, and it's unacceptable. What I think we need to do is make sure that we're electing advocates who prioritize health and safety of Texas women.
I'm sorry.
I want to give you 30 seconds to respond to what you're saying.
Yeah, I never said forced. I never said that. I said that I am a pro-life candidate, and I do have the exceptions of life of the mother, rape, or incest.
say that. I want to talk about that CPR interview. I think
So we've got about 25 minutes left at the most, and we really want to hear from these candidates, and we really want to hear the moderators' questions, and it's respectful to the candidates for them to be able to hear the moderators' questions. So I ask that you tap down the hooting and hollering and the yelling and the comments and the kind of thing, so that we can get the most of our time together. We really appreciate that.
Angie. Okay, Representative Lujan, I want to talk about that TPR interview. I think lots of folks in here have heard it or read about it at this point. Your campaign came back after that interview and said what you just said now, that this is a personal view, you support exceptions for rape and incest and help of the mother, but let's clarify the lay of the land right now. Texas doesn't have exceptions for rape or incest. It has loosely defined protections for the health of the mother, but we hear repeatedly from Texas women who were denied health care, who were denied care when they faced a life-threatening situation because the law wasn't clear about how close to death that they needed to be before a doctor could help them. Should we expect to see you leading the charge to make some of these changes in the next session?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say life, rape, incest. I just want to make that clear because there's been a lot of stuff being said and commercials, and that's bad. You know, I work all my life as a public servant, and I work hard in the community, and I work a lot with CPS issues, and I sit on the juvenile justice. Been to all 5, we have 5 prisons in Texas, and I've been to all those prisons, and I represent our district really hard. And it's tough to be a politician because then you get up there and you just get slammed on lies and things or mistruths. The word force, never said the word force, but then that comes out and that's headlines. And then you get ugly phone calls and threatening things. That's just really bad. There's no place for that. I don't like it in our culture for our district. Our 118 district doesn't deserve that, and it's just not right. Now go, back to the question, I'm telling you right now, in that interview, what I wanted to say, and I know my staff told me don't say it, but I'm going to say it. I said, if I did have a daughter that was raped, I would encourage, let's choose life. But I said, but I don't feel comfortable doing that to everybody because I don't know your family situation. I don't know if it's a single parent or I don't know if you're struggling. I don't know that situation, and you have a tragedy like that, that's their decision. That's where I stand on it. Thank you.
That idea, though, there's some space between what is Texas law and what you are suggesting you would support. Would you be leading the charge to make exceptions?
Yes, I'll be working with colleagues in those committees to do the right thing. Because one thing I don't want, and I have heard this, so this bothers me too. Door knocking. I talked to a young lady that she said she was worried that if something happened to her or her daughter, would she have to flee? Women shouldn't have those fears and things like that. So I do want to work to fix this up, to make it better for women that are suffering through these things and those worries.
Question number 3, Representative Lujan, before you came along, this district had a long preference for Democrats. Most political observers chalk up your success to your personal approach, less so than the idea that this district is turning better. In fact, as you pointed out, in 2022, you won this district while Governor Greg Abbott did not. Name some issues where you feel like this district doesn't agree with the state's Republican leaders and how you would intend to approach them.
Well, I tell you what, I work with, our delegation is mostly Democrats. And I'll just give you an example. I work well with all of them. But there's one, I'll even name his name, Representative Diego Bernal. A lot of people consider him on the far left side. He came to me with an immigration bill that he's never been able to pass. And he came to me and he says, John, let me show you my bill. He couldn't do that with any other Republicans, but he can do it with me. And I looked at the bill and I said, dude, I like this bill. My dad I grew up in high school, we used to work with migrant workers. We had this problem. No people should live like this. And it was a bill covering 4 things: roof, water, electricity, and sewage. And when we went to that place, when I was a young kid, kids were playing, the water was all damp, and we found out it was sewage. And my dad was furious. My dad got after the guy and said, we got to fix this. He's going to make a stink about it. The guy says, I'll buy the stuff if they fix it. And the migrants fixed it themselves. That always stuck in my mind. And when I read that bill, I thought immediately about that. I helped Diego pass that. I carried that for him and passing that at the Texas House, but we could never Don't clap yet, because you're going to clap in a minute. But it would never pass the Senate, because Dan Patrick wouldn't pass it. So I talked to my buddy Pete Flores. We had dinner. I shared him with him. He goes, John, ain't going to pass. 2 days later, he calls me back, Senator Flores, and said, I met with Dan Patrick. Dan Patrick said, take it to committee. He's not going to touch it. But it passes. It passed all the way through committee. It was 2 bills. It died 2 bills, or it would have been law. We're going to have it this next time. But I worked so well with my colleagues across the aisle. I think that's my strength. If I do have to brag, my strength is I'm a collaborator, networking guy. I work sales in my technology company. I like to get things done for the best of the community.
During the primaries, some of the Democrats who've actually represented this district in Austin said that your progressive politics were the right fit. How do you respond to folks like Thomas Uresti and Leo Pacheco, who said that this district needs somebody with a more moderate approach?
Well, I'll first say that Mr. Lujan is very lucky to have so many Democrats that he's been able to work with, because there are so many Democrats here in San Antonio. Today, I just got the endorsement of the Bexar County delegation. They don't usually do that, but they felt like there was a need and they needed to come out against their colleague because he said some really troubling things and he's on the wrong side of a lot of really critical issues. I'm really excited to work with my party. And since then, I've been able to earn the endorsements of all of our former HD 118 state reps. When I'm knocking doors, it is so clear that voters just want somebody that they feel like they can count on. I'm a proud Democrat, and I've always known I was a Democrat because my mom said that we're too poor for me not to be a Democrat. But I know that my community cares more about results than it does party labels. When I was enrolling families into the ACA, I never asked them if they were a Republican or a Democrat because that shouldn't matter when you talk about needing to see your doctor. I'm here to deliver results, to stand against harmful policies, to not play these weird political games, because true leadership isn't always about everybody agreeing on everything. Leadership is about finding common ground to do the most good, and I think that there's a lot of common ground.
I want to come back to that and just the endorsement from the delegation. I'm going to respond to that, but before we go there, for the first time, this district now has a representative who does have connections to state leaders, who is in the majority. How do you convince voters that it's a good idea to go back to a freshman lawmaker who's in the minority, especially when Democrats are potentially going to have even less power than they ever did in this next session?
Well, when I say I knock on doors every single day because I'm an organizer. And it is so clear that folks are looking for a fresh perspective in the State House. And they're looking for someone that's going to represent their needs. That is what's most important. I've always said that the future of HD 118 runs through, or the future of San Antonio runs through HD 118. And there are a lot of really important issues that touch higher education, housing, economic development. And I think what we need to do is talk about what we're missing in this district. We haven't had a district office since Mr. Lujan took office. And I think that what we need to do, and what I'm hearing from voters on the doors, is that we need strong community engagement and strong community support, because that's what's lacking. If elected, my responsibility will be to meet the needs of the community, but in order to do that, what we need is strong connections and a real understanding of the day-to-day issues. That's why I'm looking forward to one of my first priorities being opening a district office and setting that up so we can serve the people of District 118.
Do you want to respond to the comments about the endorsement from the rest of the delegation and or the district office?
You know, I'm going to do both. I'll do both real quick. The delegation, I know that's going to be a big deal, but, you know, I'm going to be real honest with you. Politics is ugly. I work very well with the Democrats on our delegation. This is true. I have the phone. I'm just going to dump them anyway. I got a call from 3 different Democrats saying, man, we're being forced to do this. We got to do this. It's sad that we have to do this. John, you know, explaining to me why they were going to do what they did. And I was just like, well, do what you got to do, I guess. You know, politics is politics. And I got in trouble from my own team because they even asked me, my team was saying, tell them no. And I said, no, I know politics. Do what you got to do. At the end of the day, I'll still work with you. But that's just the way I am. I did feel bad. You're not lying. Right before this debate, it's when I got the text and it said that all the delegates, and I looked at all the names and I felt sad. I said, man, all of these committed, they were staying out of the race. You haven't seen them posting or anything like that because they're just staying out. They have a lot of respect for me, how I work with them and stuff. And then to do that, it kind of hurt, but that's politics. I guess you just got to get used to it. I am probably the most accessible state representative there is. I have my district directors on call all the time. I'm at schools all the time. I sit on the juvenile justice. We have 5 prisons in Texas. I'm the only representative to go to every single unit. I meet with administrators, I meet with the JCOs, the juvenile correction officers, and then I meet with the kids themselves, 15 incarcerated youth. Why are you here? What's going on? That's my passion because the thing that bothers me, I go to those places, the majority of them are minority kids, and that hurts me. How do we stop this? How do we quit putting a pipeline to prison? Those are things that I do. So I'm super active CPS issues, JCB, A&M San Antonio. I got tons of projects working. I got my chief of staff here, my staff. We're busy. So nobody can say that I'm not accessible or not busy.
Okay. Moving on. Representative Lujan, there's a debate about the direction of the House Republican caucus, which has historically been a little more moderate than their counterparts in the Senate. So far, 48 of your current or potential colleagues, including one we just heard from, signal support for replacing House Speaker Dave Phelan with Nancy Republican David Cook. Do you still have confidence in House Speaker Dave Phelan? Well,
Speaker Dave Phelan, he's the Speaker of the Texas House of Representatives, and I respect that position. I respect him as leader. He's been good to me. I was the only freshman last session was my first session. I was the only freshman to get a vice chair position. I was vice chair of juvenile justice. This speaker, that speaker, and then the Democrats come in, and I get called, sign this paper, join this group. I said, John Lujan's staying out of everything until the race is over, because John Lujan, he's got to win a race first before he can make a decision on what we're going to do for speaker.
You've been an outspoken progressive in your career, but Texas House speakers are strictly elected on the backs of both Democrats and Republicans. Do you anticipate one of the first votes you'll be taking when you arrive in the House is to save Dave Phelan?
Right now, my focus as a candidate running for the first time is to talk to voters about the issues that they care about. For Speaker, I'm going to be looking for somebody who has strong leadership skills and a bipartisanship approach. There have been so much division in the House and so many stalemates that on really critical issues, and it's at the cost of working families like mine. For anyone who's a serious contender for the House, I'm going to be looking for someone that can bring the members together for the good of the people. So my focus is on November 5th, but if elected, that would be my approach.
Question 5, this is just a long question. Texas has the highest rate of uninsured residents in the state, of any state in the country, and South Texas is home to some of the most underinsured people in the state. It means you're both running to represent a lot of people without health insurance. In the region, the last large hospital shut down in 2023, and a replacement's not going to open until 2027. When you factor in those inequities and others, a new study from UT Southwestern Medical Center suggests that there's now a 20-year life expectancy gap between some Southside residents and those living in some Northside communities. I'd like to ask you each, what are your plans to address the vast health inequities in your district, starting with Ms. Carranza?
Well, one of the things, the single biggest thing that we can do to increase healthcare access in Texas is to expand Medicaid. Single biggest thing that we can do. Texas is one of 10 states that hasn't expanded Medicaid for no good reason. What we need to do is work together on that, because I truly believe that healthcare is not a Democratic issue, it's not a Republican issue. Healthcare affects everybody. So I think there's a lot of common ground, and I think that's where we can start. The south side of San Antonio, all of Southern Bexar County has one hospital. There are 17 on the northern part of the district, or the northern part of the county. So what we need to do is make it more accessible for the rural areas of Bexar County to be able to see their doctor.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the house probably, the next legislature does not expand it. Medicaid in the next session, what can you do sooner than that, though? What's something that's achievable in the next session?
Well, if you talk about healthcare, I'm always gonna, as an advocate and somebody that's worked with Planned Parenthood, I'm always gonna talk about women's healthcare. I think that, again, the first thing that we can do is require doctors to prioritize the life of the mother. If Mr. Lujan is saying, if what he's saying is true, that he's now suddenly is for exceptions of rape and incest and for life of the mother, then it sounds like there's going to be a lot of common ground on that. So that'd be one of my first approaches.
Representative Lujan, same question. What are your plans to address the vast health inequities in your district?
Well, first of all, I'm working very closely with Texas A&M San Antonio. We're building a new hospital out there. There's going to be some additional funds needed to be appropriated for that. The training of the medical folks that are going to be there, it's a game changer for our South Side. Along with JCB, the business that we got there, our tax base is going to, we got exciting things happening. But everything costs money. And here's what the part that scares me. Healthcare scares me because we have, the border crisis is really, really bad. I've heard, when we talk about the border being bad, and I go down to the border, and I go on the river, and I'm with Border Patrol, and I see a drone in the sky, and I'm happy that we have a drone, and the Border Patrol, they kind of grin, and I said, what's the problem? He goes, they said, tell them, and he said, just don't tell our bosses. He goes, but that's a cartel drone. And I said, why don't we shoot that down, or why don't we bring it down? He says, we can't. He goes, what happens is, if we do, we get in a lot of trouble. They said under the Trump administration, they would shoot them down or bring them down. He said, but now we can't unless it comes on our side. But even if we do it on our side, it's a lot of red tape. But I share that with you because the story they tell me, you send 300 people across the river here, and most of these are good people, and all of a sudden, Border Patrol comes from everywhere to process. And these people they're allowed in, and they bring a lot of sick people with them. They're going to the hospitals, they're going to doctors. It's taxing our system tremendously. If we're paying a lot for it, can you imagine people coming across, they're paying a lot for it. And then while all the Border Patrol is doing this, the drones in the sky are saying, okay, now we can cross over here, sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, drugs. The bad thing is we know that's happening, and that is so, so bad. And that's taxing our police, that's taxing fire, that's taxing our hospitals and our schools.
If resources are the problem, expanding Medicare sounds like a good way to tap into some federal funds. Why not do that?
They did last time for a few things for children and mother, and I voted on those against some of my colleagues' advice, but it was the right thing to do. I will evaluate each one that comes and then vote on it on its merits.
Question 6. Last session, Representative Lujan, you co-sponsored a bill aimed at preventing local governments from regulating a number of industries beyond what the state explicitly allows. And I have to say that freaked a lot of people out at the local level. I cover City Hall part of the time. This is a list of some of the things that San Antonio city leaders thought would become illegal under this law. Mandatory heat breaks for construction workers, regulating where 18-wheelers can park on city streets, watering during droughts, billboard regulation, and horse-drawn carriages. We don't know whether the law deserves its nickname, the Death Star, because San Antonio and other cities joined together and sued to stop this from going into effect, and the judge agreed with them. Can you tell us what it was you were hoping to accomplish with this bill?
Well, what I wanted to do is I'm big on economic growth. So this is the way I believe. We have a framework from the United States that here's the way we do our laws. It goes down, the states can't exceed that, they do that. And then at the local level, the city government does what they want, and I'm fine with that. But what we've been having here lately is we've been having city government go beyond maybe some really progressive laws and things like that. And for business, it's really tough because if I start a business in San Antonio and I put all my processes in place and I'm successful and we're doing good and I'm putting people to work and I want to expand to Corpus or Houston where they got totally different city laws, we stop economic growth. And Texas is successful because of our economy and because we're pro-small business and because we want entrepreneurs to get ahead in life. To me, that is just so counterproductive. I'm for local control, but stay within the boundaries. And if it wants change, then we change it at the state level so they can get within those boundaries.
Did you talk to your neighbors before you co-sponsored this bill, and do you think that this damaged your relationship with city leaders at all?
It might have damaged some relationships because I did have them there and some of them were upset. But I have to do what's right, what I feel is right for the citizens of Bexar County and Texas.
Your background is working as a progressive organizer, which includes working with some labor-focused groups, including the Texas Organizing Project, which has endorsed you in this race. You said in our voter guide questionnaire, quote, "I haven't accepted a penny from insurance and utility companies." We're here to debate co-sponsored by the Chamber, which I think would argue that businesses are, the health and proliferation of businesses in your district plays a major role in the health and prosperity of residents. How do you plan to forge relationships with businesses and learn about their needs?
Well, first, I really want to just comment on the bill that my opponent co-sponsored, otherwise known as the Death Star Bill, HB 2127. And you brought up labor. So, I have a lot of local labor leaders and members that are here today, and I want to acknowledge them. Last session, my opponent co-sponsored this bill, and what it did was it rolled back worker protections by ordinances by taking away, stripping away local leaders' authority to enact them. And the entire reason these ordinances were put together in the first place was because people were dying, because there weren't water breaks and there weren't rest breaks. So I've heard my opponent say that he doesn't think that heat-related deaths that are caused by employer negligence are happening, and I think that's ridiculous. Eugene Gates Jr. was a 66-year-old postal worker from Dallas who died while delivering mail in 113-degree weather. Gabriel Infante, he was a 24-year-old worker on installing fiber optic cables, and he died here in San Antonio. So to say that people aren't dying because they're not getting rest breaks or water breaks is pretty ridiculous.
Well, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to talk about how you're going to forge relationships with businesses.
It's really important that we're building relationships with businesses all across District 118. Like I said, I'm willing to work with businesses. I'm a pro-business person, and we got to make sure that we're working with them and pulling more jobs into District 118.
Can you explain the prohibition on contributions from certain industries?
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Can you explain the prohibition on campaign contributions from certain industries?
So right now in the State House, we don't really have very many contribution caps. So for individual contributions, we don't have any. And that's why we're seeing these billionaires coming in with big dollars that are pushing pro-voucher policies.
And Mr. Lujan, would you like 30 seconds to respond to criticism of HB 2127?
No, but I will talk about the campaign finance. That's it's expensive. Everybody knows this is probably the most expensive race in the Texas House. And to me, it's like absurd because we have to spend so much money to win a race that pays us $600 a month. It doesn't pay us anything. In fact, I don't even know, I don't, when I was her age, I don't even know if I could run because I had a family and a business and it was difficult. Now, I run a company, I run a technology company. God's blessed me, I'm successful, and that's what wanted me to give back. But it's really, really difficult. And then not only that, but this is it's like part-time. So how do you fund yourself? How do you make the money? That's difficult, And I know, you got your family. I just want you to be careful because it's straining. It's straining. In fact, I had to sell one of the company that I own, the technology company, which I no longer own. Now I work for a technology company. I had to sell it. This is a taxing job on us.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question here. Many parts of the South Side are seeing massive growth, driving up property values and property taxes for those purchasing new houses in the area, as well as those who are living in homes that their families bought generations ago. As Texas continues to see transplants coming into the community and limited options for housing that's affordable, how do you balance the need for investment and revitalization with a large number of South Side residents who be priced out of their neighborhoods? Representative Lujan, why don't you take that first?
We are seeing unprecedented growth on the South Side. I also sit on the Transportation Committee, and we can't keep up with these subdivisions going down, and especially on the east part of Bexar County, we have subdivisions where I went with residents just to see, because they were calling me, I said, it can't be that bad. We had to wait 30 minutes. A man clears part of his property so that we can get in there. There's so much growth on our side of town, and it's expensive. And then the taxes, here's the part that really bothers me. The elderly that I speak to can't even afford their house that they own because of the taxes. And even though we've lowered taxes, what we've got to do now, we're going to lower more this next session, but we really got to do something about reining in the county and the city to lower their taxes, because what happens is you'll see that gap and you'll see that catch up, and then nobody really sees the results, and we've just saved billions of dollars on that.
For many people in my district, buying a home will be the single biggest investment of their lifetime. For someone like me that's looking to buy a home in my district right now, I understand how tough the housing market is, and high property taxes are a barrier to home ownership. The property tax cut from last session doesn't go far enough because the state isn't paying its fair share in public school funding. And let me be very clear, passing vouchers will increase property taxes. Instead of trying to pass vouchers, what we need to do is fully fund our public schools so we can stop passing the burden onto property taxpayers. And it's done. And it's not just purchasing a home and those folks. We also have to talk about renters. 50% of Bexar County are renters. And last session, my opponent voted against an amendment that would give renters a 10% rebate, just like property tax owners got. So we gotta make sure if folks are wanting to purchase a home or rent a home, that they can do that and they can stay in the neighborhood that they love.
Thank you both for your thoughtful answers on all of these questions. We're going to move on to the closing statements. You've got a minute and 30 seconds each, but they multiply if somebody attacks you during your closing statement. Make sure about it. Representative Lujan, go first.
All right. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you. I love this. This is Texas. This is America. This is what we do, and we do it in a good, civil way, and I'm really honored to be here. Whether you're supporting me or you're supporting my opponent, I thank you for that. I am proud. I am very, very proud. It's an honor for me to be a state representative. I didn't grow up in politics, being a political guy or doing any of that. Always been a working guy, family guy, community guy, decided to run, and I just think it just gives me that unique perspective as a state representative. When I go to Austin, I know I see things a little different than my colleagues that have been there many, many years and are used to that. So I thank God for that. For those of you that know me, you know how I am. You know I'm a hard worker. You know I do the things that I say I'm going to do. And you know I follow up and get things done. For those of you that don't know me, please, before you cast judgment, look me up. Look at the things that I've done. Look at the things that I'm doing. Approach me. I'm very approachable. I'll talk to you on any issue that we can do. I just want to end by saying this. I live my life by the way I teach the youth and the young people. They get sick of it. And whether you're a religious person or not, that's my personal belief. I believe that we're here for two reasons. That I'm breathing air and you're sitting there, we're here for two reasons. To love God with all our heart, soul, and mind, and to love our fellow man. And when we do those two things, that's service. And that's why it's such an honor for me to serve as state representative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you all for being here tonight. I know that you're here because you care about your community. That's why I'm here too. To the voters of District 118, I'll say that you'll never have to doubt that I'm working hard for you every single day. I have a South Side work ethic. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and deliver real results. I never thought that I would run for office. I was perfectly fine being behind the curtain, but everyone has that moment where you decide to do the bravest thing you've ever done. Running for office is the bravest thing I've ever done. And I did it because I have the support of my community, and they give me the hope and the courage to fight. Extreme Republicans want to take us back in time. They want to roll back our rights. They want to privatize our education, but we're not going back. So vote, and vote for me, because if elected in November, I know that together we can move Texas forward and build the future that we all deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to stop, everybody stop. What are you going to do on election day? I can't hear you. Take your friends, take your relatives, vote. Number two, thank you for being here. Our friends at SA Report are amazing. Follow them, support them. You're going to get some unbiased, balanced news from them and what's going on. So please support our friends there. I want to thank my staff at the Greater Chamber, which is around the room, for putting this together. And I want to close by saying thank you for taking time out of your day to come spend a couple hours with us and learn about all four of these great candidates. One more round of applause for all four of them. Thank you.
Kristian.